Thank you for listening to this PodcastOne Sportsnet production, available on Apple Podcasts and PodcastOne.
The following program is a PodcastOne.com production.
From Hollywood, California, by way of the Broken Skull Ranch, this is the Steve Austin Show.
Give me a hell yeah.
Hell yeah!
Now, here's Steve Austin.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Steve Austin Show. I am coming to you from the mean streets of Los Angeles, California today. Coming to you from my office at 316 Gimmick Street. Boy, I tell you what, I was so damn proud of myself. I was sitting here at my table. I knocked out about 11-minute open. It was pure perfection. Talking about some of the things I've done in the last couple of weeks, talking about how my arm was doing. And turns out, I was over at Bill Goldberg's house just a couple of days ago, recording some podcasts with him, which can be played next week. They are of the Unleashed variety. And Bill gave me a device that you plug into the back of your Zoom H4n recorder, and you can use it for telephone calls. Well, I had been fiddling around with this thing, trying to get it to record telephone calls where I could use this on the road when I didn't have my Skype computer connection with me to make things easier, to make life easier. And while I was experimenting around, I forgot to pull the jack out of the external mic port on the back of the Zoom H4n recorder. So while seemingly I was recording Podcast Gold, an award-winning open, turns out after I'd finished all of my spots, finished all of my open, and was about to do my close, I realized I had made a mistake, and turns out when I tried to replay what I had just recorded, or thought I'd recorded, I hadn't recorded a damn thing. So here I go again. Right when you think you have technology figured out, right when you've been doing this for over 3 years and you figured you got the basics down, something like this jumps up and bites you in the ass. And then here comes a crop duster flying his ass right over my house in Marina Del Rey, so you get to listen to that guy too. I'm going to go in my garage when I get through with this podcast, and I'm going to invent a muffler for Cessna airplanes so that they don't have to ruin my podcast anymore. Anyway, what I was saying was I just got back from the gym, having a lot better work in the gym these days. The right shoulder is healing up very nicely. It's feeling a lot better than it has been. I'm still doing, for physical therapy, passive range of motion only. My therapist moved my shoulder and my arm around. I cannot pick it up laterally. I don't engage as a muscle. I'm just training with my left side. I'm lucky I can brush my teeth and eat, use my fork to feed myself, but other than that, I don't use the right arm for anything. As far as the gym goes, what I've resorted to is training upper body on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday is for legs. As far as upper body goes, what I'm doing, if I'm doing an incline press, it's just with one dumbbell, and that right arm stays kind of on my abdomen area. So what I'm doing is supersetting everything. I'll pick out an exercise for back and chest, and I'll do 5 sets of each in rapid-fire fashion, resting about 45 seconds between the superset. I'm staying in the range of 10 to 20 reps, nothing super heavy. Today I was working out with 70-pound dumbbells and doing 70-pound bent over rows with one arm dumbbell rows. And then I'd pick out another exercise, more machine-oriented stuff, and 2 opposing exercises. So I was doing 4 total exercises for chest and back, superset fashion. And then when it came to shoulders, I would use like a pre-exhaust technique where I'd start off doing dumbbell side laterals, and then I'd do an upright row with that dumbbell, and I'd take that right to a press. And I did about 8 sets of that round-robin fashion with about 40 seconds in between each triset. And then I went to the shoulder machine and a seated shoulder press machine and got in about 5 sets of just one-arm presses. Then supersetted bis and tris. The same thing, same type of fashion, 2 opposing exercises, 30 seconds rest between each set. After about 5 sets of each, 2 more exercises. So by the time it's done, man, I'm getting a pretty good swell on my chest, back, shoulders, my arms coming around a little bit. That right side is really flat. Still really, I've lost a lot of muscle mass. Legs, it's just leg presses, leg extensions, and leg curls. Nothing crazy. I can't squat yet because I can't put my arm around a bar and hold it on my shoulder, and can't put a weight or a load on my shoulder as well. But other than that, man, everything's going good. What was cool was the other night when I went over to see Bill Goldberg, I didn't have any plans on staying over at the Goldberg compound. But, man, we started talking and visiting, and one podcast led to another. And I ended up spending a night out there in the man cave on the garage part of the compound where Bill keeps all of his supercars and all of his muscle cars. And, man, he's got a badass gym set up right there in the top of that thing. And so, man, I jumped out of bed after I spent the night and had a real good workout using a lot of hammer strength stuff. I think when I go to rethinking what I'm going to do for my workouts, I'm going to employ a little bit more machines, more hammer strength stuff, or just machine-oriented stuff, rather than I'm still always going to use the barbells and the dumbbells. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to radically rethink what I'm doing as far as my fitness routine goes. I had a great time hanging out with Bill and his family. I want to say thank you for all the hospitality. The podcast with Bill Goldberg will start airing next week, and I think you're going to enjoy the conversations that I had with him. I've known Bill for probably almost 20 years, and we've never really hung out together because I was always in a different territory, coming or going, and he was doing the same thing. So this is the first time I've really spent any extended amount of time with the guy. So we had an absolute blast hanging out together, and I want to give a shout out and say, Bill, thank you very much. Due to this recording device, you just caused me a real big headache, but I'm trying to figure this thing out as I had it plugged into my Zoom H4n recorder. He didn't tell me how to work the thing. He just gave it to me, but I had a blast hanging out with Bill and his family. And while I was down in San Diego, I talked to a Navy SEAL named Jocko Willink, and Jocko served 20 years as a Navy SEAL and then retired, and him and his partner, his friend and former Navy SEAL, wrote a book. And the name of the book is a New York Times bestseller called Extreme Ownership, How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win. And I went down there to the Victory MMA gym right there in San Diego, right down the road from the San Diego Sports Arena where we used to wrestle with the WWF, and talked to Jocko at the Victory MMA facility, which he is a co-owner. And I tell you what, man, we were in a little bitty room about 4 feet by 7 feet, and we were that close with an intense Navy SEAL, and we're talking about all the things we talked about and being a leader. It was very inspiring, and I tell you what, I read the book from start to finish. I listened to the audio tape. Love chapter 12 when he talks about discipline, and the discipline was kind of the kick in the ass that I needed to really get my rehab on track, and not just my rehab because that's been going fine, but to get my weightlifting routine back on track. So Jocko, thanks for the motivation. It was good talking to you. He will be on the show coming up on the Thursday Unleashed podcast. Bill Goldberg coming up next week, and that's the bottom line. And speaking of bottom lines, I talked to a guy who was very instrumental in my career from back in the day in WWF. As I was driving back from San Diego to Los Angeles, that is a bad drive. That traffic is so bad, it bottlenecks so many times on that highway. It's a scenic drive. It's a beautiful drive. But, man, the traffic comes to a standstill for no reason. So, anyway, while I was riding home back to Los Angeles to my family, I decided to call one Vince Russo up, see how he's doing. Vince was a big part of my career back when he was writing for WWF during the Attitude Era. And so now he has Vince Russo's The Brand on the PodcastOne network, just like I do, and he's running 5 days a week. And I wanted to call and check in and see with him. I wanted to call him and check in and see how his podcast was doing and how things are going at PodcastOne. And I tell you what, it's just like any time I call Vince, a 5-minute conversation leads to a 45-minute conversation, and we're laughing and talking about wrestling and booking a territory. So while we were talking, I said, before I hung up, I said, dude, why don't you come on my show? And you've been trying to get me to talk about the Attitude Era forever. I don't remember most of it, but come on my show. We'll shoot the breeze on Tuesday. And we'll talk about the Attitude Era. Hell, I'll hand you the steering wheel half the time, and you can just ask me questions, and we'll go back and forth. So the conversation you're about to hear is me talking with Vince Russo, and you can hear Vince Russo's podcast, The Brand, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, on PodcastOne and iTunes, and it's free, just like mine. That's my guest today, Vince Russo. But before we get to Vince Russo, I've got to take care of a little bit of business, and I got to say thanks to all the great sponsors of this podcast, because I wouldn't be able to do it without them, and without you guys supporting the sponsors either. So thanks to SeatGeek. And if you ain't downloaded the SeatGeek app yet, I don't know what you're waiting for, because SeatGeek makes it easy to buy and sell sports tickets and concert tickets. And I know how it is when you want to buy tickets online, because most of the sites make it real hard to find what you want, and then they try to sneak in a huge fee at checkout. Well, not at SeatGeek. The SeatGeek app lets you find whatever tickets you want right from your phone. Are you looking to go to a baseball game this summer? Or maybe one of the big rock festivals? Check out SeatGeek and score yourself a great price on tickets. SeatGeek pulls all tickets available from other sites into one place, so you save time and you never miss a deal. Every ticket on SeatGeek is given a grade based on value, so you can immediately find underpriced seats. And SeatGeek is always honest and upfront about the price, so you get the full ticket price from start to finish and ain't surprised with huge fees at checkout. And all you Steve Austin Show fans get a $20 rebate off your first SeatGeek purchase. All you have to do is download the SeatGeek app, go to the Settings tab, and click Add a Promo Code. Enter the promo code STEVE, and then SeatGeek will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase. So download the SeatGeek app now and enter the promo code STEVE. All right, here we are, 316 Gimmick Street. I'm rolling sound. I got Vince Russo of the PodcastOne podcast. His Vince Russo's The Brand. Let me break down this little paragraph. It says about Vince Russo's podcast. It said, Vince Russo's The Brand. Former head writer of WWE, WCW, and TNA, Vince Russo unleashes the brand and fresh content 5 days a week, including interviews with superstars in wrestling and entertainment, especially hot women, episode-by-episode reviews of the WWE Attitude Era Raw, most written by Vince himself, and his wildly popular Bucket Full of Chicken Necks, where he rants on everyone, including his own flesh and blood. Vince, good morning. How are you?
I'm all right, Steve. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing good. I know we decided to do this podcast together and, pump up your show, but also I get asked so many Attitude Era questions that I've forgotten many of the storylines that I was involved in. And every now and then you and I will get on the phone and start talking, and hell, you'll bring up all these damn things that I don't even remember. So I said, man, let's do a podcast, and I'll let you take the steering wheel a lot of the time, and let's just go over some of the periods of that era. But before we do, I'm notoriously bad about listening to any podcast, particularly my own. Vince, I've only listened to one episode of my podcast in the 3 years that I've been doing it, and that was when I wrestled a fly in Mexico because I had no internet and I had to come up with a show. We're running family friendly here today, so I won't get into the details of that. But tell me about your Bucket Full of Chicken Necks, because I know you're building up an audience very quickly over at PodcastOne. Your numbers are coming up, so congratulations on your success. But talk to me about Bucket Full of Chicken Necks.
Well, Steve, I want to say first that my success is greatly due to you, because, by you having me on your show, that was very, very instrumental in me getting over to PodcastOne, and that's where I wanted to go all along. And yesterday, on one of my shows, I was plugging the Stone Cold podcast. And listen, I want to know if you agree with this statement, Steve. I said, this is my third time on the show, I think I'm becoming Stone Cold's. I think I'm becoming, if you're Johnny Carson, I think I'm becoming your Don Rickles. What about that, Steve?
Dude, if you're going to make me Johnny Carson, I can't argue with that. I think that's much too high of a compliment, much too much praise. But Johnny Carson was the king of late night television. To me, to this day, and not discounting anyone else and with respect to everyone else, but Johnny Carson's just the way he would put everybody over, his grace, charm, his delivery, low-key, relaxed. To me, he was the king of late nights. That's a hell of a damn compliment. So I don't think I'm treading anywhere near there, but nonetheless, I'll go with it.
God, Steve, I have to tell you, man, about 6 months ago or so, a lot of these TVs are bringing back, a lot of networks are bringing back vintage TV, which I'll tell you right now, if they brought back vintage Attitude Era, it would no doubt outdraw Raw every Monday night. I mean, I don't know why they just don't do that, but my point is Carson reruns are on every night. And Steve, I got to tell you, bro, I sit back every night and just mark out because one after one after one, the stars, I mean, bro, legit big time stars that come and sit on the couch. I find myself sitting there every night watching it and just saying, you know, what happened? Like, where are the Frank Sinatras and the Dean Martins and the Sammy Davises and where are these megastars? What happened?
Dude, I don't know, but tell me about this bucket full of chicken necks, because that was the initial question. Is that where you just go off on everything and you've got an open mic and you just spew all the stuff off your brain?
Yeah, Steve, every day we have a different theme on the show, Monday through Friday. Bucket full of chicken X's. Listen, bro, all day long, all week long, I keep a running tab of the things that piss me off. And when I get to Bucket full of chicken X, I let loose. And, Steve, here's the kicker, though. When I do the show, I have to make sure that nobody from my family is in my house because they get it worse than anybody. My own family gets buried worse than anybody.
Yeah, but you don't use four-letter words, but no. It's just they just get tired of you ranting and burying everybody.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So I just have my list and I go off from one all the way through.
Let's go back and let's talk about the Attitude Era because, man, that was the hottest part. Well, it's the hottest wrestling business has ever been, period. But, man, for me, if I put on cardio in my garage, if people ask me my favorite period of wrestling, as much fun as I had, you know, back in the day in that hot run with all the guys in the locker room, the gals too, man, it was just one of the greatest periods of my life. And me being a pure wrestling fan, that I remove myself from the picture and go back to the stuff that I grew up on. You know, I'm always mid-'80s, you know, World Class Championship Wrestling, Mid-South Power Pro, NWA. That's my favorite stuff. So my question is, with you being around, and you and I are almost the same age. I may have you by a year or two. I'm 51. How old are you, Vince?
Nah, bro, I'm 55.
Oh, you're 55.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my favorite period of wrestling is in the mid-'80s. So my question is, you really seem to be with music. Let me put it this way, so I'm not insulting you. I'm stuck in the hair bands. I'm stuck in the 80s and 90s. Many of today's artists, I would say 99.9% of the music artists do not resonate with me. And man, there's due respect with there's a couple of people in the country that grab me, one or two in rock and roll, but I like that older stuff. You seem, is it mired or just stuck on the Attitude Era as just being your most favorite period of wrestling? You had to dig some of the stuff that you watched back in the day. Why are you still harping on Attitude Era?
Well, Steve, I've stated many times the Attitude Era was definitely not my favorite period of wrestling. I mean, it definitely was not. You know, I'm the guy, I grew up with Bruno Sammartino. I went to Bob Backlund. To me, the early years of WrestleMania 1 to 3, I think that was the greatest era in professional wrestling. I take that over the Attitude Era. The only reason I talk about the Attitude Era, you know, to the lengths that I do is just because I was involved. Right. You know, I was there, was a big part of my, my background. But I think those early WrestleMania years, I think that was the greatest period in professional wrestling.
So what was it then? Was it the action in the ring? Was it just the fact that the main guys had character development, had great promos? It wasn't over the top, because a lot of stuff we did in the Attitude Era, I mean, it was a lot of pretty forward-thinking stuff. Well, some of the sexual overtones were a little too much for even me. But, you know, a lot of people, when I talk to or hear some of the comments made by certain WWE superstars, they look back at the Attitude Era as kind of a disgraceful period, and they think, there weren't any really good matches that happened back then, or really the product wasn't great. And, hey, I think some of the storylines were a little heavy on the sexual overtones. My deal has always been badass action, reasons to care about the characters, and great action in the ring with violence, as long as it was a means to an end. So, man, when I look back at some of these people who were either on the fringe or young in the company while this period was going on, I'm like, man, what are you talking about? There was some really, really good stuff. Certainly there was some of the stuff that just stood out as being glaringly bad, but dude, I don't think maybe it was the right time at the right place and everything lined up, but it was the hottest period in the history of the business. Would you attribute that just to the sole fact of what we were doing at WWE, or because it was competition-oriented and WCW was throwing everything but the kitchen sink at the TV as well? How would you describe that, as much as you loved that old stuff back in the day?
Well, Steve, listen, I think wrestling consists of three things. I think there are three very important elements. And in my opinion, without these three elements, you don't have professional wrestling. And I'll be quite frank with you. I don't think any of the three exist today. None of them. That's why I am not a fan of the wrestling business today. Bro, it has nothing to do with me writing the Attitude Era or being stuck in the Attitude Era. Steve, I'm still a baseball fan today. I'm as much a baseball fan in 2016 as I was in 1976. But wrestling, no. And I'll tell you, here are the three things, in my opinion. Characters. Intriguing, compelling characters. You put those characters in compelling storylines. And number three, the fight in the ring, you believe it's real. You believe that people want to win. So you got your characters. The characters develop the storyline. They bring it to the ring. I believe I'm seeing a fight. I don't think any of those things exist in professional wrestling today.
Man, yeah, especially the third element that you just brought up, because I've talked about this match twice on my podcast before, you being as entrenched with your show and still, covering the wrestling / sports entertainment business. Did you get a chance to check out that match between Will Ospreay and Ricochet?
I absolutely did, yes.
Okay, you break that match down to me because I know you haven't been listening to my podcast. You're busy doing your own. I'm not going to sway you either way. Tell me your thoughts on that match.
Steve, can I tell you what's going on? And, Vader chimed in on that match, and he got beat up, and everybody's insulting Vader because God forbid Vader has an opinion. Do you know why people like me, call me old school, whatever you want, do you know why we take offense to watching a match like that? It's real simple, Steve, because they call it pro wrestling. If they called it something else, I think it would be okay. That is not professional wrestling. I just said to you, professional wrestling is character, story, and you believe the fight is real, somebody wants to win. None of those three elements existed in the match. So I'm not knocking the match. They can do whatever they want to do, but at the end of the day, if you call it professional wrestling, people like me are going to have an issue because that's not professional wrestling.
Man, I would argue, well, first of all, I concur with you on many levels. What those guys did as far as timing, precision, execution, check this out. If that would have been a karate movie or an action-adventure movie, those guys to film that scene, let's call it, that 20-minute scene, it might have taken them anywhere from 10 to 50 takes to get that right. And for the most part, they nailed everything dead on. So I got to give them a lot of props for that. And the athletic ability that both men possess, due to the fact that one of them's only 23, I guess the other one's give or take around 27. I'm going to hire those guys because if they can do that, I can teach them or work with them on their character development. I can work on making it look more like a fight. Mechanically and talent-wise, they're very, very sound. But on the backside, going to what you're saying, calling it professional wrestling, I alluded to this if I didn't flat out say this, that to me, what that was more of, and I don't think then if I give you this term, it will make you angry or say, hey, that's not pro wrestling. I called that performance art.
Yeah, well, Steve...
So if you call it performance art, then it doesn't upset you because, to me, that's what it was.
Yeah, and the word I use, Steve, I go back to Rocky III, Thunder Lips and Rocky, Hulk Hogan. It was an exhibition. That's what that match was. To me, we saw an exhibition. And, bro, make no question about it. These were probably two of the best in the world, as crisp as you can get. Better than anybody I've seen on the WWE in that type of style. style, but this was an exhibition. I never at one time, Steve, watching that match, I never felt somebody wanted to win. And if I don't feel somebody wants to win, then it's not pro wrestling to me.
No, I agree. The sense of urgency, or just trying to make a cover, make a 3 count, lay in your offense to make it an actual athletic contest. It has to be a contest. You can have 2 football teams go out there, and if they just go through the motions and run routes and the linemen are just grabbing their guys and just kind of standing there, hey, that's not really a football game. When it's a slugfest and there's a will to win and it's dirty, sometimes it gets sloppy and it's not so crisp and clean. Man, I'd rather see a couple of botched moves in a hard contested match than see, perfect execution and somewhat of almost ballet-type performance. Again, performance art, exhibition, as you put it. And again, I'm not running down both guys because I put this match over being what it was. I'm not going to go back on that statement. But as we're talking about, why you didn't like it, my thoughts on it, yes, I don't believe it was professional wrestling in the sense of, especially going back to the early days, WrestleMania 1 through 3, that period which you're so fond of, me, that Attitude Era, or that mid-'80s work style, man, when the NWA, Bill Watts, Mid-South Power Pro, man, some of the, Ted DiBiase, some of those matches, him, Michael Hayes, Jake the Snake Roberts, I mean, everybody in that locker room could work their ass off, and you thought, oh yeah, the business has always been a work, but back then, the way it was presented and the way the guys worked in the ring, it was a friggin' contest.
Yeah, no, Steve, I want to, you know what? I want to bring up something with you, and you and I have never had a discussion. I think this will be tremendous for your audience. I don't think you've never talked about it before. As I said to you, every day on my podcast, it's a different theme, and on Wednesdays we look at, Raw, the Attitude Years, and we look at an episode from Raw, and we go back and we talk about it, and we just watched SummerSlam 98. Okay? Now, Steve, if you don't mind, I have the Vince Russo version and side of that story I guarantee you've never heard before, and I am dying to ask you some questions that I've always wanted to ask you, and I've never had the opportunity to. Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah, SummerSlam 1998. What happened?
Okay, bro, I got to tell you something, Steve. I always made a rule of thumb to know my place in the wrestling business, and my place in the wrestling business was I was a writer. Okay, so when it came to the in-ring action, I always made it a rule of thumb to stay away from that, let the agents and the talent do their thing. Vince Russo is not a wrestler. So I very rarely got involved in, the mechanics and what happened in the body of the match. This was a particular instance, Steve, where this was probably the one time where I yelled at Vince McMahon and I screamed at Vince McMahon and I got more hot at Vince McMahon than I ever did in my life, Steve. And I'm being honest with you. I don't know why I wasn't fired. And I can remember, Steve, it was the build to SummerSlam and everything revolved around you and Taker. Is Taker in cahoots with Kane? Is he not? There were a very intriguing storyline. I don't think you'll ever see anything like it today. I just don't. So as we're getting closer to the event, it was after a show and I was riding in the car with Vince, and basically Vince tells me that you and Taker want to more or less have a babyface match. And I was like, Vince, that is all wrong. I don't think the fans, especially in New York at the Garden, are going to want to see a babyface match. I think they're going to want to see these guys kill each other. I think they're going to want Taker to be a heel because, Steve is so over as a babyface. And, Vince went on to explain to me, Steve, that I know you and Taker were really, really, really tight. And, Vince basically said that it was the kind of match that you two wanted to have. And I respected that because I understood it. I understood why you wanted to have that type of match. But my writing instincts had to tell Vince, bro, with all due respect to those talents, I feel it's all wrong. So now I go back and I watch the SummerSlam match. Steve, I haven't watched it since that day. I never watched it again. And now from what I can remember, this is where I don't want to put words in your mouth, and this is why I'm asking you. I remember, after all was said and done, that you and Taker were not happy, particularly with the match. Now, Steve, I got to tell you this. I knew that in the back of my mind going in and watching it. So now I sat down and I really watched the match from bell to bell, and I was like, well, I don't think they have anything to be unhappy about as far as the match is concerned. It was a solid match. It was a fight. Both you guys wanted to win the match. But of course, as a writer, I didn't like when Kane came out and then, he was sent back away. And the one thing, Steve, like that, I almost didn't even catch that night, which I look at it now and I'm like, man, Vince, you dropped the ball. If, like, as the writer, you were responsible for this, you dropped the ball. Steve, I love the fact that Taker sent Kane away. He wanted a straight-up match. And now, before we go into the finish, you low-blowed Taker. So it's almost at the end of the day, you got one up on Taker and you wound up screwing him, you being the heel. I thought that was magnificent. I thought that was brilliant. But here's the part that I looked at and I'm like, bro, I don't think we protected Taker and Kane. After the low blow and the 1, 2, 3, there's that one shot of you celebrating and Taker and Kane watching in the runway and doing nothing. And now as I look back as a writer, I'm saying, man, Taker went out of his way. I'm going to have a fair fight with you. I'm not getting Kane involved. He sent Kane away. At the end of the day, you did what you had to do to win the match, which I thought was brilliant, but I couldn't buy the two of them standing there and doing nothing when the match was over. So, man, I'd love to hear your scenario on that whole moment in history.
Well, here's the thing, man. When did you come on and when did you start writing, Vince?
I started getting involved, Steve, and you'll appreciate this. I can remember vividly when you were with Savio.
Okay, then that would have been about 95 and a half, coming into 96.
Yeah, I remember vividly. Remember the match when the lights went out?
Yeah, and match, Florence, South Carolina.
Yeah, so I was really, really there in the infancy stage, not heavily involved. I was at the fringe at that point.
Okay, so here's what happened. As you saw me, I started coming in. I came in as a ringmaster, and then I started doing a little color commentary. Vince was editing my lines because we were doing, every other show was live, every other show went post-production. So that's when I noticed that Vince was editing my lines in post-production because I was popping guys in the truck. So I confronted him on that. And then that's when, as you've alluded to many times, that's when I got a chance to do the color commentary a couple of times and got myself over. Man, I had some venom I was spewing out, and it was very entertaining. Much like, Kevin Owens has been able to capitalize on a few instances of that as of late. He's been doing some great mic work. But anyway, as you saw me starting to spin up and get hot, well, all of a sudden, Taker was kind of I guess Sean was gone. Maybe Brett was still there.
No, Brett was gone too.
Brett was already gone. Okay, so then it was myself and Taker with the rest of the locker room, and I started getting hot. And I remember Taker came up to me and he said, "Hey, Steve, it looks like coming up here pretty quick is going to be you and me because we're the hottest things they got." And it wasn't a major pay-per-view or anything of consequence. It could have been in your house. I don't remember, but it wasn't like a major build. It was just the fact they needed the two hot guys to go in and do battle. So, sure enough, I can't remember where we were. It might have been Madison Square Garden, where SummerSlam 98 took place. I think that's where it was, but it doesn't matter the building. What happened, Vince, I know we're going into this pay-per-view, and so I go out there, and whether it was dark or whether it was on television, I think it might have been dark, but dude, I went out there and grabbed that microphone and I started spraying venom. And I was already getting over as a babyface, being, pretty much construed or taken by the crowd as a babyface. Hadn't really been labeled as one, or maybe I was just still getting hot. But because I felt, let me make my point, because I felt going into the match, and this is before SummerSlam 98, I thought there needed to be a heel and there needed to be a baby. So I went out and tried to turn myself heel just going into that match. Dig this. I go backstage because the people were already, my momentum was babyface, or, I was headed that way to being a babyface, and I thought I needed to be a heel. So I walked backstage and Vince comes up to me immediately and he goes, Steve, he goes, what in the hell are you doing? I said, what do you mean? He goes, why did you do that? I said, well, man, I got a match with Undertaker. I figured somebody's got to beat a heel. And he goes, what he was saying was I had just curtailed all the forward momentum that I was actually receiving by trying to be a heel. These people were starting to embrace me, and I was trying to turn them because those are my instincts. So anyway, that was what happened on the first time I took on The Undertaker in a pay-per-view. I tried to turn myself back heel, or just at least be considered a heel going into that match. On SummerSlam 98, again, I knew that Taker and I were going to be, and I did the favors for Taker clean in the middle of the ring on that first match. So heading into SummerSlam 98, I know it's going to be me and Undertaker. We're headed that way. It was my idea to come up with the Highway to Hell campaign. I named that pay-per-view after the AC/DC song, and Vince dug it, and he goes, hey, man, let's do it. And so this badass poster, and me and Undertaker are battling out right here on the poster. No way, Vince. When Vince McMahon told you that Steve and Undertaker want to be babyfaces in this match or have a babyface match, nothing could be completely further from the truth. I would have done whatever it took to do whatever it took in order to make it more personal, or, one of us from a heel standpoint. It was never my desire to just remain babyface heading into that match and have a 50-50 match with Vince. Those were his words. Those weren't my feelings or my sentiments. So whatever he was telling you was him being the master of puppets, controlling everything. You chipped in your ideas, but ultimately, he's the man making the call. So that was his idea. Those were his thoughts. By no way, shape, or form were those words that I conveyed to Vince saying, I want to have this kind of match with Undertaker. Simply didn't happen. Oh, and then going to the finish. So what happens is we're having an okay match. Taker and myself, because I think the characters of The Undertaker and Stone Cold were in many ways very similar. You got two badass guys, and just neither one of us are true sympathy type baby faces, if that's what you want to call us. I got nothing but respect for Undertaker. I'm sure he probably thinks pretty well of me. We didn't have the greatest in-ring chemistry like I had with Bret, he had with Shawn, he had with Bret, or I had with, some of the other guys. So we were out there trying to work our ass off. And prior to that match, I'm not the toughest guy in the world, but I've never been knocked out in my life. And part of the match, I hit the ropes. Undertaker goes for a backdrop. I kick him in his chest. He's going to straighten up and no-sell it. And when he does, the back of his big-ass head hits me right under the chin. Boom. Knockout blow. He flashed me. I went down on the mat. I was knocked out. I was only knocked out for maybe 2-3 seconds. All of a sudden, I'm laying on the mat on my back in Madison Square Garden. Don't know where I am. The referee of that match was Earl Hebner. Earl Hebner looks down at me. He's kind of got this little grin on his face. He goes, God dang, boy, you all right? I looked up at Earl. I said, where am I? He goes, God damn it, boy. He goes, you in the garden. So I get up and we continue the match. And one of my biggest disappointments in that match, we're on our way to having a hell of a match. I got knocked out. From that point on, Vince, I don't remember the rest of that match. I remember laying on the table. I remember Taker getting on the top turnbuckle and dropping that leg. And I'm thinking, we kind of talked about it. I didn't know if he was going to do it or not. But, I was going to stay there anyway because that's what you do. But all of a sudden, that's one of the things that I do remember that match was Undertaker with that taking a courageous bump there and dropping that leg off that top turnbuckle. I'm just kind of, all right, this is going to be interesting. He lands, everything crashes. We finish the match. Oh, before we go into the finish, let me cover how the finish came about. Man, I thought the Stone Cold Stunner was a pretty effective maneuver to put a 1, 2, 3 on a guy. The low blow wasn't my call. The low blow was either a Taker call or Vince call or somebody call because they wanted him to get beat by more than just a stunner. So the low blow, I thought, for me, if I'm going to go over as hot as I was, stunner ought to do the job. But the low blow was just to further weaken him before I kicked him with the stunner. That's how that match happened. That's how I got knocked out. Remember a little bit of it. Saw him come off the top, but the low blow was on him. Now, speaking to Taker and Kane talking, or Kane getting sent back during the middle of the match because Taker wanted to do the job or finish the task at hand with me, I don't even remember that. But I never, ever went into that match, Vince, wanting to be a baby. I don't think Taker, whatever direction we were both going at the same time, I don't remember. But, dude, we were there about being money, about being business, about oil and water and a story. So it wasn't us trying to be good guys in this deal at all. That was Vince telling you. All right, everybody, let me step right in here and take a quick break. A word for the sponsors to keep this show on the air for free. I'm coming right back with Vince Russo of Vince Russo's The Brand on PodcastOne. Are you looking to create your own badass website? Well, then you need to go to Weebly.com/Austin. Weebly makes it easy to create a professional quality website, blog, or online store. And Weebly has a wide variety of professional design, mobile-friendly themes to choose from. You just pick a theme, and then you drag and drop your content to build and publish your website. And it's really that easy, and it's really that fast. And you can update and change your site anytime on any device. You can do it right from your phone. And you see, I think that's the best part. Weebly has an app that lets you update your site, add more content, and check your online store orders right from your phone no matter where you are. You don't need to be in an office or sitting at no computer to work on your website. With Weebly, you have instant access, so you can take care of business anytime you need to. Creating a fantastic website shouldn't get in the way of your dreams. Join the over 30 million people who are already dreaming big with Weebly. Get started today for free at Weebly.com/Austin. That's Weebly.com/Austin. Let me spell it out for you. WEEBLY.com/Austin. Weeds are like nature's boomerang, and Roundup knows they keep coming back. With one spray of Roundup Mass Control 365, kill those stubborn little rascals right down to the root and keep them away for up to a year. Draw the line and stop weeds from boomeranging back. And this week I'm drawing the line at the late, great Muhammad Ali and what he did for boxing and sports in general. Ali was one of the most original promo guys I've ever seen or heard, and he took boxing to levels unheard of. Ali's also the first to admit that he was a big wrestling fan and may have been a little inspired by Gorgeous George's style on the mic, although Ali totally took it to another level, another stratosphere. So I'm drawing a line at Muhammad Ali being one of the greatest entertainers to ever step inside the squared circle. And Roundup's drawing the line at weeds. Your patio should be for cooking out and kicking back. Roundup Mass Control 365 helps keep it that way by keeping weeds away for up to a year. One spray of Roundup Mass Control 365 gets you up to 365 days of weed-free relaxation time. Draw the line. All right, here we go. Teeing it back up. Flying by the seat of our pants. Vince Russo.
Let me ask you this, Steve. A couple of questions when you tell me that. I mean, great freaking story. There's a couple of questions I have, not only as being there and, being the writer, but also as a fan. First of all, let me just tell you, bro, this is an absolute shoot. Having just watched that match a week ago, nobody knew that you were knocked out for 2 or 3 seconds and you didn't have your, your wits about. Nobody would have been able to watch that match because that's news to me. I did not know. With that being said, Steve, was there any truth to you guys not being happy with this match when it was over, and why?
Man, Vince, when you go out there, that was Madison Square Garden. And Taker knows this, as old school as he is. He got into the business, give or take, about a year and a half before I did. And me coming up still in the territory days. And, learning, finally, Taker learned how to get over all that talent he possessed, whether it was as the Punisher or whatever he was doing in USWA, to go down to WCW and this big, raw-boned, badass, good-looking, physical guy. You could see talent and money written all over him, and him never getting a chance because maybe he wasn't pretty enough. All of a sudden, he goes into WWF and gets over big time with one of the greatest gimmicks of all time. And me, coming down the road that I came, 7.5 years of bureaucratic red tape and BS and being held back, getting a mini shove, a mini push, and then shut down. So I was plenty pissed off, and I rolled into ECW, started cutting those promos. Vince calls me. I'd already met with Vince a couple of times. I could see that he only wanted me to be there to be a mechanic. He never had any plans for me to be a star. Finally, it was time to get out of ECW because that was the only place to go was the WWF. I went. They called me the ringmaster. I turned it into Stone Cold. I got over. So, mister, I wanted to preserve everything that I had, and I was full of piss and vinegar when I finally got the opportunity, and I got over. So I say all that because when you get over, and you can get over nationwide, worldwide, but sometimes it takes buildings to get over, and Chicago became a stronghold for me. But that was one of the first big cities to really embrace Stone Cold Steve Austin. Then I got over in the Garden. So the reason we were not happy with the caliber of that match, because you've been around enough. You've never been in the ring as a performer, but you've been entrenched or engulfed by the feelings or emotions that crowd is emoting or giving out during a match. We knew that we could have had a better match. The crowd wasn't hanging on every single move or every single section of the match, and that wasn't a cookie cutter all prefab match. We had 5-6 bullet points and the rest was fill in the blanks. We knew that we had not captivated that crowd to the degree that we had them hanging from the rafters, waiting on the next move, who was going to win. The drama wasn't high enough. The, dare I say, interest wasn't at the proper depth, because when you go back to some of the matches that Taker had with Shawn, or maybe the one I had with Brett, or maybe The Rock, when people are hanging on every single thing you do, we didn't have that night, and we knew that we could have done better, and we didn't hook the crowd enough. Bottom line, we didn't hook the crowd enough. You can ask Taker and tell you the same thing.
Can I tell you something, Steve?
Because but before you do that, you can think you had a great match, but if that crowd, and technically you could have a great match, but if the crowd isn't moved by that match, then you failed.
Bro, can I tell you something, Steve?
Go ahead.
And again, I had not watched this since that night. I had not watched this, but I don't know if you remember this, Steve. And this isn't an excuse. And listen, I know you're a pro. Taker's a pro. Nobody's going to make an excuse, but I have to say this. I don't know if you remember this, bro. You guys followed Triple H and Rock in that ladder match. And, bro, I got to tell you, Steve, that match, we talk about believing the fight. That match was an all-out war. And I got to tell you, by the time I was finished watching that match, I was freaking exhausted. I was exhausted watching that match. You guys had to follow that match. So with all due respect, Steve, I think you got to add into that equation, after the fans just went through that match, which was, unbelievable, off the charts, violence, phenomenal. Now here come you and Taker. You know how it is when you have to follow something up. So I think you got to take that into consideration.
Oh, and it's not something I sit here and perseverate on and say, hey, man, 98 SummerSlam.
Steve, that's a big word that I don't even understand that word, bro.
I'm not going to sit here and stew on it. I'm not just going to say, man, SummerSlam 98 is haunting me. We couldn't hook that crowd as better than we did. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I guess I would get my neck fused up in the back end of 1999, give or take. take. And so that was kind of one of the earlier matches that Rock and Triple H were going to have. And as you know, in my absence, and they would have knocked it out of the park had I been there, so I'm not saying anything, but in my absence, when those guys were asked to take another step up, they both knocked it out of the park, and they had two of the best years that they had, whether they were wrestling each other or anybody else. They really stepped up and just took over the roster and the top of that card. So I didn't remember, like I said, I'm looking at the poster right here, but I know the entire card. Sometimes, and to your point, I won't go back and watch that match, but yeah, sometimes every now and then someone will steal the show and you cannot follow that match. And I know now that's why we did, or indeed that's why we had a hard time following that match. Sometimes, as you know, when you're writing a show, you have that buffer match or give those people a come down match so that they can come back up. Case in point, go back to the night I had a first blood match with Kane. Well, that was the main event. I had spent 3 days in a Houston hospital with a
staph infection.
With a staph infection. So I get out of the hospital, I go straight to the building, got the bandage on my arm. Well, that's not an excuse. That's just where I came from. What the deal is, Undertaker was going to fight Mankind in one of the damnedest cage matches of all time. The bar has been raised so high. Taker's been in so many with Shawn's, but that thing was a spectacular event. I won't say spectacle. It was a spectacular match. Some things went wrong that weren't supposed to happen. Many things went right, which were supposed to happen, but the end result was just off-the-chart brutality, a hell of a story, and a hell of a damn match. So there was no way. And Kane and I went out there and worked our asses off and had a great time out there, but there's no way we could have followed that match because it was those guys' night. Back in WrestleMania 13, when I took on Bret the Hitman Hart in the semi-main event, Undertaker and Sid were the main. They couldn't follow that bloodbath and that badass story that Bret and I put on a clinic. So sometimes you just have those nights. But, looking back at that SummerSlam match with Taker, I got knocked out, but probably the biggest takeaway was, yeah, we followed a hell of a match, which I didn't even remember happened.
Steve, do you mind if I kind of segue? Because I want to segue based on something that you said that I think is very important. And it'll kind of bring us to the here and now. But you pointed this out, and I want to bring it up because it's current and it's relevant. And I want to get your view on this if you don't mind.
Go.
All right, Steve. You just hit the nail on the head. I was there, and I've said this story a million times when it was me and Vince in his office. I sat across from Vince. We're going over the new guys, how Vince wants me to produce them, and we're talking about the Ringmaster, and Vince looked me in the eye and said, Steve Austin is to never say a word. DiBiase does all this talking. I was a fan of Stunning Steve Austin. Stunning Steve Austin and Stone Cold Steve Austin were two completely different people. I love the confidence of Stunning Steve Austin. I love the character. So I could see what was there. So I remember looking at Vince and saying, you sure? And yep, he's not to say a word. He's just to go out there and wrestle. Well, you being the pro that you are, and I tell this to the young guys all the time, you are constantly telling me, Vince, I could do more. You got to give me a mic. You got to give me the opportunity, yada, yada, yada. The situation arose to put you on color. Bro, we put you on color. Stone Cold Steve Austin is born. Here's what I'm getting at, Steve. When we had a situation like that and we were writing the television, it was me and Ed Ferrara at the time. This is how we wrote TV, bro. Give all the credit in the world to JR. He put together this roster of the greatest wrestlers he could find on the planet. He put this roster together. He gave me and Ed the roster and said, okay, guys, here's the team. Ed and our philosophy was, listen, no matter who you were on that card, whether you were first match, mid-card, or main event, our job was to get everybody over. The more people over, the more money everybody was going to make. That was our job, okay? So Steve, what we did, and people don't understand this, we had pay-per-view to pay-per-view booked. But we literally wrote week to week to week based on who was getting over and who wasn't, what the crowd was saying, what the crowd wasn't. Our finger was on the pulse. So here's Steve Austin. All of a sudden, the hotter Steve gets, the more he gets the following week and the following week and the following week. And, Steve, keep in mind, we're studying the ratings, and you get minute by minute ratings, and it tells you who's in the ring when the ratings are going up, who's in the rings when the ratings, and this was our master plan, because why? At the end of the day, you got to give the people what they want. They're telling you what they want. Just keep giving them more of what they want and take away what they're not watching. Case in point, this past week, or the past couple of weeks, Steve, I interviewed Damian Sandow and Adam Rose. Okay? Both guys said to me, the way it kind of works right there now, Steve, is you're put in a box and this is your spot. You're maybe a first match on the card, maybe a second match, maybe your mid-carder, but this is it. This is the box you're staying in. We're putting you right in this slot, and it's not going to change no matter what you did. Now, Steve, I know you don't watch the product religiously, but bro, during Sandow's run as Mizdow, the guy hit it out of the free. He was the most entertaining thing on the show. If this is back in, 98, now we're going with the guy. Now he's going to the next step. Now we're creating another star, for Vince and the WWE. But obviously, according to what they're both telling me, once you're slotted for a spot, you're slotted for a spot and you ain't moving up in the card. And I'm sitting here and I'm saying to myself, why did the philosophy change? Because the end game should be to try to get everybody over. Why are we putting limitations on guys? Why are we telling guys, listen, this is as far as you're going to go, and not giving them more opportunity? From a psychological standpoint, Steve, why do you think that changed? Because, my God, bro, if it were that way back in 98, there may have never been a Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Well, man, it's a real tough thing, because I agree with you. I got a chance to talk to Damian Sandow on several occasions when I'd go do the WWE Network Stone Cold podcast. And I remember when him and Miz started doing that gimmick, and I was thinking, man, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And I told both guys this to their face. And I said, man, I appreciate you guys sticking with it. And then, man, it started getting over. And I was highly entertained by it, just like you were. And yes, it was one of the best things on the show for a long time. And Damian Sandow was working his ass off to do what was asked of him. And Miz really stepped up his game. That guy came onto the scene, and he got a main event shot at WrestleMania. And then he kind of, regressed. And now, he's back up to where he needs to be. And there's been a guy who's been really adaptable and has stayed, due to he's doing everything that he can do to maintain his spot. So props to the Miz for all his hard work and trying to do things in a big body world. He's got a pretty good looking guy, real good gift for gab. And just his character is him. And Sandow worked his ass off to do all the stuff. He was a stunt double, so he was basically working a match on the floor. Sometimes he'd get on the apron. And he did exactly what they asked him to do. He far exceeded and anybody's expectations of him, because when they first brought him in, Damian Sandow, that's a cool name, but then they started him off in those sorry-ass pink trunks. And I'm like, pink and black work for Bret Hart. And, nothing wrong with pink, but just that the tone and the color. I said, this is you brought this guy into the company and you handed him a 100-pound anchor just to get off Jump Street. You might as well give him an anvil and told him to jump in the ocean and say, hey, swim back to the top. So finally, after all this hard work and repackaging, they come up with this gimmick. He gets over, just like you said, but just like you said with respect to Damian Sandow and Adam Rose, they were put in those boxes and they weren't allowed to get out. And Sandow deserved to get out of that box. Go back. As you say, case in point, they brought me in as a mechanic, ringmaster. And then I called him. I said, dude, I watch this special on these serial killer called Michael Kuklinski, whatever the hell his name was, the Iceman. I came up, or whatever, Stone Cold Steve Austin gimmick. And all of a sudden, the guy that was never supposed to be nothing, never talk, started moving up the card, got into main event status, and started selling out every single arena we went to. Sold all this merchandise. I'm not blowing smoke up my ass. My point, Vince, is if you lined up everybody in 95, 96, when I first started, and say, hey, pick out the superstars that you see and you want to invest in because these are the guys we're going to run with. Me and those sorry-ass green trunks and my Hollywood Blondes boots and still had that Buzz haircut, man, I was a ragamuffin compared to some of the presentations and some of the physical packages that some of those guys had, with the height, the weight, the body, the physique. And you're going to think, you're going to look at me and you think, that guy ain't never going to be a star. He's a pretty damn good worker. We're going to keep him as a mechanic. So all of a sudden, if I'd have popped like I started popping and you'd have kept me in that box, hell, I'll go ahead and say it, the biggest potential superstar of all time, like I said back in that ECW promo, finally got his chance and turned into all that I turned into. And I don't know how bright or how high the ceiling is for Damien Sandow, but my point is, going back to your point, hey, man, if you can put guys in boxes, I crashed through the damn thing. Sandow deserved a bump. He deserved a bump up. And so I can only imagine how frustrating it was or is for those two guys. And, look at Cody Rhodes. I guess he wanted to get away from the Stardust gimmick and, go down a different road. I don't know the particulars of his story. Was disenchanted, and decided to leave the company because he was so frustrated. And I don't know how far he would have made it up the car. That would be speculation. I have said, now due to the brand split, maybe it wasn't the best time to leave, but he probably didn't know about the brand split, and maybe that would have afforded him another opportunity. But let's go back and talk about those two guys. If you want to put guys in boxes, or if you want to predetermine everybody's career as soon as they come out of school and just look at someone and just based on face value what they are at the time and say, okay, this is a role player, this is a mid-card guy, hey, man, you're shooting yourself in the foot. And I tell all those WWE guys down in NXT or guys that are in the business right now, never, ever, anytime you're riding down the road, you need to be thinking about what's the next step, what's the next evolution, what I need to do to break out of this box to get to the next level. And so when you look at what I started with down there in Dallas, the long spandex tights, long hair, and then the WCW run, and then Hollywood Blondes with Brian Pillman, and finally, ringmaster, Jesus, what a low spot. And then the Stone Cold Steve Austin thing, you got to give a chance. You got to give a talent a chance to have the opportunity to take a swing at the damn ball right there when they're batting with the bases loaded or one man on first. Here's another thing that's really frustrating when you talk about guys like that. Look at poor Zack Ryder. That kid, he was just kind of an early mid-card guy, and then he starts getting on YouTube. He creates his Long Island Iced Tea series, whatever it's called. Man, I watched, I don't know how many of those things. It was so damn entertaining. The kid got himself over. And then, they bring him back, and, here's a guy that, okay, maybe he could have been like the equivalent of like a Brutus the Barber Beefcake, similar type role, or maybe, maybe mid-card or upper mid-card or, three-quarter card. I mean, the dude could have done something, but I don't know. For some reason, maybe some body types, some personalities, they just don't see any future in, and they cut him down.
Steve, what do you think? And I know you can't answer this because you're not there and I'm not there, so I can't answer this. So I know it's all speculation. But like, Steve, what would be, I don't understand what would be the psychology of putting any creative performer talent in a box. It's almost like, bro, I'm gonna equate it to baseball. I'm a baseball fan. It's almost like, you've got a shortstop at AAA batting 250. So now the Giants are going to bring him up to the big club, and they're going to say to him, hey, kid, we're going to put you on shortstop, and we're going to be happy with you hitting 250, and you're going to hit 250. Like, they don't want the guy to hit 300, even if he can. I don't understand the psychology of putting guys in a box and slotting them in, and I don't know how that benefits the company.
Well, it doesn't benefit the company. I mean, there's a couple of guys, that they have high hopes for right now that you can see they're not in a box, they're pushing them. And, when I'm looking at the guy, I'm thinking, man, we're going to see how this push goes, because I don't know that they're ready for that push. But they've already anointed them as potentially one of the guys. And they're pushing them at a pace where, man, if it's sink or swim, they're going to start sinking before they start swimming. But just because the business is moving so fast these days, the work style has changed. And so some of these kids are going to get out there and get an opportunity when they've been the chosen one, but they can't perform at that level yet. So, again, it's almost like shooting yourself in the foot. On the other side of that, you got to have certain guys that you pick as blue chippers to give them that opportunity. But, there's a fine line between getting the shove when you're not ready, but not even a fine line, a whole different thing of being stuck in a box. But to answer your question, I don't know. Believe me, when I came in, I thought I had a very high confidence level down in WCW. I was working my ass off just as a mechanic in the ring. Loved having those matches with Savio Vega. Savio Vega and I worked together for 2 or 3 months when I first came in from ECW, and I was still recovering from that tricep reattachment. Didn't have any wind in my sails, no lungs. I was gassed out every match working with Savio, and man, he brought my chops up. He got me back in the shape that I needed to be. And when me and Savio were working one time at the SeaTac Arena down there in Tacoma, wherever the hell we were at, and we rocked that damn building. We was the third match on the card, and nobody could follow that damn thing. And they never, ever had any plans for me to be nobody. And so, if you're down there at NXT and your label is a nobody, or nobody sees anything in you, and maybe you're just a body that they have hopes for because they're not going to try to invest any money on anybody they don't believe in. But, man, the thing is, Vince, I just guess from a performance standpoint, on one hand, you've got to have some sensibility of, I want to say what's impossible, because if you don't have enough of the skill set, if you don't have enough of a look, you really are probably not going to be a main eventer. But if you got enough of the things that you need to be a main eventer, whether it's size, look, ability, talk, some type of just crazy charisma, always believe in yourself, but never be satisfied with the status quo. Keep tweaking what you're doing and just stay the course. And if you stick around long enough or pound hard enough, you'll eventually break through. Because if they'd kept me in that box, and maybe they did, I just decided to break out of it. But at that time, I really didn't give a rat's ass, Vince. So I was going out on a limb, because you were there. I was going out on a limb. I didn't care. I'd already been around 7.5 years, and it was either make or break. Go for it, or just be the 6'2", 250-pound guy in the mid-card. I didn't want to be that guy.
Yeah. Steve, can we ruffle a few feathers?
I might as well.
All right. I got to tell you something that's really pissing me off, bro. It's really starting to piss me off. I am getting so sick and tired of hearing these younger wrestlers, okay, Steve, use the word evolve. We are evolving the business, okay? Because first of all, let me get one thing straight. They need to run to a dictionary, because I don't know the education of these guys. First of all, look up the word of evolve, or look up the word of evolution and understand what that means before it comes out of your mouth. To evolve something means that there's a gradual change, and the end game would be a gradual change for the better. That's how something gets evolved, okay? I am so sick and tired of these guys putting themselves over, taking credit for, we're evolving wrestling, like nobody in the past did anything. You know, guys like Steve and Taker and all that, and we go way back, bro, way back. No, nobody did anything. They're evolving it now. They're gradually changing it for the better. I got to say a couple of things about this because I'm so sick and tired of hearing this, okay? First of all, they haven't evolved wrestling. They changed wrestling. They've changed the game. Again, I'm going to equate it to baseball. Okay, the last couple of years, they now have the instant replay. Okay, they've made the game better. Okay, they've evolved the game of baseball. They didn't change the game of baseball. They didn't add a base. They didn't take away the outfield wall. They evolved the game to make it better. There were no changes. These guys today have changed the business. And let's just call a spade here, Steve. Let's just be honest with each other. They can sit there and call a Vince Russo the grizzly vet. Vince Russo is irrelevant. Vince Russo is bitter. I'm still waiting for somebody to tell me what I'm bitter over. I have no idea what I'm bitter about, but I'm bitter, okay? Steve, I gotta tell you something, and it's this simple. And this blew me away, and this happens on a weekly basis. Steve, last week during Raw, from hour 2 to hour 3, 600,000 people turned off Raw. 600,000 people. Now, rather the WWE stop in their tracks and say, wait a minute, maybe we need to take a closer look at this evolution because maybe all the fans that brought wrestling to the dance aren't interested in this evolution. Rather than say that, because again, bro, there are no characters, there are no storylines. I don't believe the fights are real. You've changed professional wrestling, and I'm not the only one to see it. Monday night, we've gone from 10 million people viewing wrestling to 3 million people viewing wrestling. Now, Steve, here's what I love, and this came straight from the horse's mouth, Triple H, okay? Oh, it's a different time. It's a different time. Steve, let's go down the list. We have DVR. We could watch it on an iPhone. We could watch it on an iPad. We could watch it on a computer. The television habits aren't the same. Okay, Steve, so what you're telling me is from hour 2 to hour 3, when Raw lost 600,000 viewers, at that moment in time, 600,000 people decided to shut off their TV and go watch the third hour on their phone. Bro, it's freaking ridiculous, Steve, and I'm so sick and tired of this word evolve. It's absolutely BS. You've changed it, and you've not changed it for the better. If you changed it for the better, more people would be watching. Vince Russo would not know what the hell he's talking about. But I'm a numbers guy. I'm always a numbers guy. I will always be a numbers guy. And you've gone from 10 million people to 3 million people. Don't pat yourself on the back. We're evolving the sport. No, you're changing the sport, and the masses are telling you they don't like the change. When are you going to wake up? And when is professional wrestling going to be professional wrestling again?
Okay, so then if you were in charge and you were writing to keep those 600,000 people from turning, what steps would you put in place to turn the momentum, bring the people back?
Steve, you know what pisses me off when I watch that show on Monday? It's so simple to me. First of all, Steve, the work ethic of the boys has never changed. I can tell you that without a shadow of a doubt. I go back, I watch the Attitude Era, the way you guys work. Those guys are working just as hard today. So it's not the boys. It's the style of the boys. I put a lot of that emphasis on the agents. The agents are supposed to be the seniors who say, no, don't do that. You know, nobody will buy that. You got to sell this. You got to sell that. The agents aren't doing this. So these guys are going out and doing whatever the heck they wanted to do. But Steve, here's this is what pisses me off. From a creative writing point of of view, there is an art to writing a television show, and there is a method to keep your audience. And it's not just wrestling. It doesn't matter what the show is. It could be Game of Thrones. It could be Breaking Bad. It doesn't matter. There's a method to keep the audience. And when I watched the show today, I see zero effort from a creative point of view. When I was writing, we were trained, Ed Ferrara and myself, this is how we wrote the show. The guy is sitting in his chair watching Raw, begging you, give me an opportunity to go watch WCW. Give me a chance to change the channel. And our goal was that guy is never going to be able to change the channel. Fast forward to 2016, I'm looking for anything else that's on TV besides professional wrestling. Bro, when Teen Mom comes on at 8 o'clock, Steve, I switch over to Teen Mom. I'd rather watch Teen Mom than professional wrestling. I get pissed off because the effort is not there. Every show should be, every performer works every match like it's their last match. And from a performance point of view, Steve, you don't know if you're going to break a back. You don't know what can happen in the ring. Every match could be your last, and that's how wrestlers wrestle. Why can't writers write that way? Why can't I write a show? This is the last show I am ever going to write. If I get hit by a car tonight, this is the Vince Russo show I want them to remember. I don't understand why it can't be done that way. So first and foremost, it's freaking effort. It's accountability. It's caring about the show. And you know what? That all falls on Vince McMahon's shoulders. It doesn't fall on the writers. It doesn't fall on Triple H. It doesn't fall on Stephanie. I can't believe for 1 minute Vince McMahon is walking away from that gorilla position on Monday nights and saying, well, that's the best show we could have possibly put on, because we did that every Monday night during the Attitude Era. When that show was over, we know we gave every ounce we had across the board to make it the greatest show we could. You can't say that today. You watch that 3 hours of Raw. Half of it is fuller, and 80% of it you're watching this and you're sitting there saying they just don't give a crap. So first and foremost, here's what I would change. First and foremost, have some pride. Have some pride about the product that you're putting on television show for the wrestling fans, not the internet wrestling community nimrods and geeks that are going to watch it as long as wrestling is in the name of the show, but for those casual fans that brought you to the dance in the first place. Put on a show that will make them proud to be wrestling fans. Don't put on a show that 600,000 people are going to turn it off from hour 2 to hour 3.
Hey, I got one more thing to tell you about before we wrap things up. The Resurrection of Jake the Snake documentary is finally out on DVD and Blu-ray. This is the inspirational story about how Jake the Snake turned his life around with the help of Diamond Dallas Page and DDP Yoga. And even if you have seen the documentary at one of the screenings that Dallas hosted last fall, you should still get the DVD because Dallas and his crew put a ton of extras into the DVD. And there's over 20 bonus features, including commentary by Dallas, Jake Roberts, and director Steve Yu. Now, I've seen this documentary a few times now, and it gets me every single time. It's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. It's an incredible story, and if you haven't seen it, then you need to, because this is not a wrestling documentary. This is one man's journey to turn his life around, reconnect with his family, and restart his legendary career. And right now, you can get the collector's edition of The Resurrection of Jake the Snake at ddpyoga.com/Austin and get 10% off anything you buy for a limited time. So get the documentary and get inspired. And then get yourself on the DDP Yoga program and do all that for 10% off by going to ddpyoga.com/Austin. As Dallas always says, all you got to do is commit. And when you see what that commitment did for Jake the Snake, you'll want to commit too. Start living a healthier life today. Go to ddpyoga.com/Austin and for a limited time, get 10% off anything you buy. All right, everybody, give me the go-home cue. It's time to wrap up this podcast and ride off in the sunset. But before I do that, I want to thank my guest, Vince Russo of Vince Russo's The Brand, 5 days a week on PodcastOne.com and iTunes. You can download his 5 days a week on PodcastOne.com and iTunes. You can download his podcast for free. Vince Russo's The Brand. Always good talking to you. Hey, before I leave, I'm going to give you guys something to watch. And what I'm going to give you to watch has to do with my next guest on the Stone Cold podcast coming up next Monday on the WWE Network for $9.99. Anyway, enough plugs about the network. The match I want you to watch, and man, I tell you what, AJ Styles has had a million spectacular matches. I just picked one at random and enjoyed the hell out of it. The match I'm referring to, if you go to YouTube, type in Kurt Angle versus AJ Styles, and then it says SV11, so that's Slammiversary 11, XI, whatever you call it. It's a badass match. Both guys working at the top of their game, and I'll tell you what, I've been doing my research on AJ Styles, so I'm looking forward to talking to his ass on the WWE podcast, Stone Cold podcast, and we're going to be coming to you live next Monday. This guy's been around for a long time, got a lot of respect for him. I'm looking forward to having a conversation with him. Hey, man, real short and sweet. All my plugs, if you're looking for a Broken Skull t-shirt, a Broken Skull knife from Cold Steel Knives, or a Broken Skull IPA, all my links are at BrokenSkullRanch.com. Here in California, you can find Broken Skull IPA at Whole Foods, Total Wine, and you can order it on InsideTheCellar.com, but you can also find that link at BrokenSkullRanch.com. Folks, I want to tell you right now, I appreciate all the word-of-mouth advertising you guys are doing on behalf of the podcast. I ain't got no advertising budget. We ain't spending nothing, so it's all word of mouth. You can have the greatest this or the greatest that in the world, but if nobody knows about it, they can't enjoy it, listen to it, or whatever. So thank you guys for help spreading the word about this damn podcast. That's the biggest thing all of us in the podcast business face, is trying to spread wherewithal about the show. I want to say thank you to the sponsor of the Steve Austin podcast, because if it wasn't for them, quite frankly, I wouldn't be able to do this for you free twice a week. So big ups, SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code Steve to get a $20 rebate after you make your first purchase. To ddpyoga.com/Austin. Get 10% off anything you buy for a limited time only, including the collector's edition DVD and Blu-ray of the Resurrection of Jake the Snake documentary. To Weebly. Get started on your badass website for free at Weebly.com/Austin. To Scott's Roundup. And, of course, a big thank you to Amazon. They've been supporting this podcast since day one. If you use my Amazon links whenever you're doing any online shopping, Amazon will kick back a couple of bucks to the podcast, and it don't cost you nothing extra. That's right. There ain't no hidden fees, no charges. If you want to help out the podcast, you can buy whatever you plan on buying, and they'll kick back a couple of bucks to help us pay our production cost. End of story. You can find my Amazon links by going to PodcastOne.com, clicking on the Killer Deals button in the top right corner of the page, and then hitting the Steve Austin Show button. There you will see all the Amazon links for USA, UK, and Canada. And if you bookmark it, you can find it much, much easier. Hey, folks, keep listening. The 60-second AP News headlines are coming up next. Before I ride off in the sunset, I wanted to say my thoughts are with everybody down there in Orlando. People lost their lives. People lost their loved ones. There's people still in the hospital. It was a terrible, terrible, tragic event, and I just don't know what to say, but my thoughts are with you, and this is something that should have never, ever happened. Folks, until next time, my name is Steve Austin, and I'll catch you down the road.
Download new episodes of The Steve Austin Show every Tuesday at PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.